And I think by the end of June, you are going to look back and go, who the WTF was I when this month started? It's time to stand at the center of your universe and claim yourself as the creator. Like really standing at the center of your reality, knowing that it is all happening not just in response to you, but because of you. You are the purpose that your soul came here to embody. Your life, your experience, your joys, your sorrows, your successes, your failures, your well being, your challenges, your health, your illness, your difficulty, your ease, all of it is the reason that you exist. You are the reason that your reality exists. Without you, the version of reality that you are currently living and inhabiting and creating, it wouldn't exist. Think about that. Think about that for a second. Say that to yourself. Take a minute, place your hand upon your heart, close your eyes, and say, without me, the version of reality that I am currently experiencing would not exist. If you are looking around at any aspect of your life and you are disappointed or unhappy or uneasy about any of it, the good news is that you can recreate it. You must decide what you really want. Everything is radiating out from you. You are the center of your universe. You are the gravity. You are the connection point. You are the GPS pin on the map. Your experience is a product of your creation. Hey everybody, it's Amar. Happy June. Even though this is the June Ascension Energy Report, whenever you are finding this message, it is evergreen. What that means is when you have found it, it is the perfect time for you to be receiving it. If you're new to my channel, welcome. What I do essentially is I make the woo-woo real. My job is to take really, really high-level spiritual concepts and understandings and distill them down to their practical, real-world components. I have an ability to take this really, really expansive perspective and bring it down to earth, make it real and accessible and practical so that you can start applying these methods and these teachings to your life today and start creating lasting positive change now. June is an interesting month. June is from a spiritual and energetic perspective. June is the month, especially here in the Northern Hemisphere. June is the month when we really start to see the flourishing of life return. We really start to see the expansion and the growth and those green shoots pushing up from the ground and starting to leaf out and flower and ripen. June is the month where we are really called to resurrect ourselves. The big question for June is, what do you really want? I mean, imagine that you have Creator, God, Spirit, Universe, whatever you call that divine force. Imagine that you are sitting across the table from Spirit herself and she's saying, baby, what do you want? Like, what do you really want? I've asked this question of you before, and I have been asked this question many, many times over the past few years. But it really is crucial because the question, what do you really want, is not a trick question. It's not a bait and switch. It's not going to lead you to another dead end or a cul-de-sac or, the brick wall standing in front of you, and suddenly you're going, wait a minute. Why did this happen again? Why am I stuck? Why have I stopped? Why am I feeling blocked? The answer to that question is you must become the immovable force of your life. It is time for you to reclaim the center of yourself, the center of your life, and know yourself as the primary creative force that moves through you and creates your reality. You have to fall in love with yourself. You have to fall in love with yourself. You have to choose yourself. You have to want yourself. The most powerful thing, the most powerful move, the most high level expert move, the trick that is up your sleeve is to fall in love with yourself. The most powerful thing that any human can do on their journey of manifestation and creation is to fall in love with their own energy. You must want your vibe. You must love your flavor. You must relish and revel in who and what you are at your core. You are a being of immense power. You are a being of unconditional love and infinite compassion. And in order to inhabit this new earth reality and make it sustainable, you have to believe that, you have to own that, you have to claim that, and you have to move through the world with that in your pocket. The version of you that was created out of fear and trauma was the survival mode version of you, right? It makes sense. When you hurt yourself, when you're injured, let's say when you sprain your ankle or break a foot or break a leg or something, you need a cane or a crutch to help you along. There's going to be a period from the moment of traumatization through the process of healing and then into the journey of transformation. There's going to be a period of time where you need the support of the crutch or the cane. You need that to walk. But the key is to remember once you are healed that you no longer need that crutch. You no longer need that assistance. And in many ways, the personality that was created out of the fear, out of the trauma, out of the struggling and the suffering, that isn't who you really are. At least not in the purest sense. That is who you had to become. That is basically a bunch of coping mechanisms that just became your personality by default. Here is the key. The new earth requires an authentic version of you in order to sustain the living of the life that you envision in that higher timeline. You can't jump into the higher, more liberated, more crystalline, more expansive timeline if you are still moving from the wounds and the beliefs of trauma and fear, or the personality characteristics that really are just coping mechanisms that you called a personality that you kind of forgot to discard or examine or stop and ask yourself, wait a minute, is this really me? Is this really how I want to move through the world? Is this really what I believe about myself? So, the version of reality that you see when you close your eyes and you imagine the ideal future or your preferred reality, do you see images of yourself living in fear? Do you see yourself living in lack and scarcity? Is the vision of you that you have for yourself in your most ideal, most expanded, most exalted, most connected timeline? Do you see a version of yourself who is holding back or playing small or settling or saying no when they don't want to or yes when they don't want to? Is anxiety and depression, are those the ways that you are inspired to move through life? This is about summoning, calling, reclaiming, and remembering the most confident, assured, faithful, trusting, relaxed, and open version of you stepping forward. The part of you that lives in the realm of miracles and knows that the impossible and the extraordinary are everyday occurrences. This is the version of you that it's time to embody. You cannot live as a creator being, as a godling, and also move from fear and anxiety and lack and struggle. At some point, you're going to have to put those ways of being aside. Nobody can take away the challenges and the struggle and the suffering that you have endured in this life. It was real, it happened, and nobody can say that it didn't. But what it is time to decide is, what are you going to do about that? Are you going to continue to let the struggling and the suffering and the challenging and the trauma and the wounding and the difficulty, are you going to continue to allow that to define you and tell you who you are? Or is that going to become a part of your past? Is that going to be something where you say, yeah, it happened. I was there. I experienced it. I'm not bypassing it. I have processed all of the emotion and the energy and the feeling around it. And now it's time for me to move on. Now it's time for me to step forward. Now it is time for me to embody the aspects of me that are true and authentic. The infinite, eternal, magical creator being that you are is ready to step forward. Spirit isn't asking you to play small or to minimize yourself. Spirit is not asking you to continue to hold back and bite your tongue and edit or censor yourself. In fact, in order to live in the higher timeline and have it be a sustainable way of being, you must be the most fully expressed version of you that you can. Most of us are walking around with that tap on a trickle. It's just a little dribble of truth. It's a dribble of power or light or energy or confidence or certainty or faith or the miraculous. And it's time to turn the faucet all the way on. It is time to unleash. It is time to expand. It is time to shine your light at the most brilliant capacity that you can muster, because that is the version of you that exists in the higher timelines. The minimized, afraid, limited, insecure, uncomfortable, and awkward version of you is not the version of you that's going to carry you into the New Earth timeline. That version of you did a whole lot of good for you. That version of you got you to where you are. So it's about having deep gratitude and deep appreciation for the challenges that you chose, the challenges that you experienced and created for yourself so that you could get to this point where the choice is now yours. Are you going to remember the truth of who you are and take that path forward? Or are you going to continue on the merry-go-round of the Groundhog Day of another loop of suffering, another loop of struggle, another loop of disappointment and disillusionment? The choice is yours. The truth is that God wants what you want. God is your imagination. Your imagination is God in action. That is how you begin to access your abilities as the creator being that you are and bring it into reality. Life does not deny itself. Life creates only ever from the totality of life. The sun doesn't say, oh, I only shine on these people and not on those people. The sun just shines. It is unconditional, it is unequivocal, and it is available to all. You can certainly step out of the sun's light. You can hide from the sun. You can duck and cover and take shelter, but that does not change the fact that the sun is always shining on you and is always available. When you look outside and you see clouds in the sky that are currently covering the sun, that's just a temporary situation. The sun still shines. You are life itself. And the only way you can deny yourself, the only way you can be denied is by deciding that you are going to deny yourself or be denied. And that might happen deliberately, that might happen on purpose, or it might happen unconsciously and by default. Either way, the time of denying yourself and holding yourself back unnecessarily is over. One of the things that I have been experiencing in my own life is, and for those of you who've been following me for a while, this is probably a familiar story, but I moved back last summer, about a year ago, to the town that I grew up in, a small town in Wyoming, to live with my father because he's been having health issues. He's in the early stages of Alzheimer's, and I needed to show up and help him get his life in order, help him get everything organized, help him prepare himself and his estate and everything that that entails to move into assisted living. I've finally gotten him into assisted living. We finally got him set up, and now I am tasked with staying in his home and getting his estate ready to auction off and the house ready to sell. All of that is to say, this has been one of the most challenging and transformational periods of my life. This past year, I feel like I have lived a million lives. I have become a million different versions of myself as I have gone through this process of clearing and balancing the karma that was between my father and I, of making those good on those agreements and those soul contracts that we had before we came into this lifetime as father and son. And one of the things that I had to realize and I had to accept is that the conflict that I have been experiencing with my father, honestly, for most of my life, it's never been a direct, like head to head fighting and arguing, but there's always been this unease and this tension between us. What I didn't realize as a kid is that my dad suffers from chronic anxiety and depression. I wasn't aware of this. In fact, I don't even think he was aware of it. We just thought that that's how dad was, and dad just moved through the world as someone who experienced chronic anxiety and depression. What that meant for me, as someone who was very, very sensitive, as someone who was really, really tuned into the energies and the frequencies of other people, is I became the caretaker for my family. And specifically for my father, I became the entertainer. I became the one that could make him laugh. I became the one that could soothe his anxiety. I became the one that could distract him through my performances and through my entertainment. What I didn't realize as a kid is that I was taking on the responsibility of his anxiety, his depression, and the suffering that that created for him. And I was the one who at one point just accepted this belief that I was responsible for his emotional state of being. I didn't realize how much pressure that is for a young human to handle. I didn't realize that basically since the age of like 5 or 6, I have been running this program in my head and in my mind, in my body that says, you are your father's caretaker and you are responsible for his emotional well-being. When I had this moment of realization a couple of months ago, especially a couple of weeks ago after he moved out of his home and moved into assisted living, and now it's just me here living in his house with all of his stuff and all of the messes that I am here to help him clean up, what I realized is that anxiety and depression and the conflict that that created within me was the thing that was actually keeping us together. because we never had a relationship that was built upon emotional well being, emotional stability, and a healthy mental perspective. I didn't realize that anxiety and depression in my immediate environment became something that I was just accustomed to. And when I look back now upon reflection and look at the people, the relationships, the experiences, the people that I've dated, the people that I became friends with, the circumstances that I found myself in, that was essentially recreating the environment of anxiety and stress and depression without even realizing it. It was like I was keeping this pot of anxiety just simmering on the stove because my nervous system became accustomed to that. My nervous system was steeped in that from a very, very young age. And so the idea of living in an environment without anxiety and depression present pretty much chronically, if you would have said to me, like, hey, Amar, do you want to live in an environment where anxiety and depression are a constant part of it? I would have said no. But it was my subconscious and my unconscious programming that wasn't aware of until recently that actually was driving me to continue to choose people, places, and experiences that activated and sustained that anxiety and depression. Needless to say, this has been a huge wake up call for me. Suddenly, when I had that moment of connection and that moment of clarity, I saw it everywhere. I saw how I chose patterns and behaviors and beliefs and experiences, the people that I dated, the people that I spent my time with, the jobs that I took and said yes to, and all of the things. In some way, there was this thread of anxiety and depression that had to be there in order for me to feel at home and feel comfortable. The reason that I'm sharing this is for me, the experience of stepping out of that old way of being not only has been a game changer, but I have found it to be incredibly insightful to see where unconsciously I am choosing small tastes, small little bits of anxiety and depression over and over and over without even realizing it. In order for me to make peace with my father, I had to make peace with the fact that I was choosing experiences and environments that fostered and nurtured anxiety and depression within me because that's what was familiar. And in order to release that, I had to release that version of my dad. I had to release that version of our relationship. And now, as I stand here at the threshold of this new beginning and this new reality, I realize that I can no longer continue to move through the world in the way that I have. And in many ways, the biggest task for me has been surrendering the belief that I am responsible or accountable for my father's emotional well being. And that has been the challenge of a lifetime. But here's what I realized. I am at the center of my reality. I am the center of my universe. And the reality that I am experiencing, the reality that I am living and inhabiting and creating in real time would not exist if I wasn't here. The version of the world that I have created through my own experience would not exist without me. And so to realize that in order for my reality to function at its highest level, I have to be at the center. Think about geometry, and just from a geometric perspective, if you are measuring the shape of something, then you are going to find the center. And the center, let's just use a sphere as an example. The center of the sphere is always at the center. And if the center moves, then the surrounding shape, the surrounding geometry must also move because in order for the center to be the center, it has to be at the center. So when the center moves, everything that is built around that center must also move. Now, what does that mean for you in terms of your life and what you're living? What that means is that if you move into a version of reality where you are minimized, where you are struggling, where you are incapable, where you are unworthy, if that's the version of reality that you're living in, then everything that is constructing itself around that center must reflect that. This is really, in the simplest terms, how you move in and out of dimensional realities, how you move in and out of timelines, and essentially how you can time travel in your own life. Because if I take the center of my consciousness, the center of my awareness, and I root into the version of me from 10 years ago, and the things that I believed, and the things that I was engaging with, and the things that I was doing with my time and attention and awareness, if I move my center to that point in space and time, then my reality reality must reflect that because it is universal law. Everything out here was created by what's going on in here. So the only way that I could find myself in a world, a reality, a version of life that I preferred was to center myself within it. And if I am not at the center of my reality, then suddenly the shape, the reality, the world that is built around it becomes unstable and imbalanced and lopsided. That's what we're seeing happening on the planet right now. The version of reality that we have collectively been living was not sustainable. It could not happen anymore. And Spirit basically said, okay, time out. It's over. It's done. It's canceled. And so the center of our experience is moving. And we are now trying to figure out how to construct ourselves around that. But because right now things are in transition and things are in flux, it feels really chaotic and it feels really unstable because the center is still finding itself. The way that you make yourself essentially impervious, immune to the chaos and the insanity that is happening out there collectively is by choosing your point of focus, by choosing your center, grounding into it, rooting into it, and becoming unshakable and unstoppable. You must become the immovable force that exists at the center of your own reality. And you must say, this is what I choose. This is what I prefer. This is what I require. And the old way is just not an option anymore. So when I exclude or deny or vacate myself or reject myself or put somebody else, i.e., my dad, at the center of my reality, then by definition, that reality becomes imbalanced and unstable because I am the center of my universe, not my dad. My dad is the center of his own universe. But in order for me to be in my most powerful, potent, effective creator self, I must be at the center. The center must always be at the center. It can't be anything other than the center. And when I leave the center, my life becomes unstable. So the question for June is quite simple. Are you ready to rule your reality? Are you ready to step into your role as the divine human, human 2.0, Homo luminous? Are you ready to step into the ascending new earth timeline and reclaim yourself as the ruler of your reality? If the answer is no, then you can stop this video and move on with your life. If, however, you do want to reclaim your role as the ruler of your reality, here are a few things that you need to know. Number one, it first begins with main character energy. You cannot play a supporting role in your life anymore. You are not an extra. You are not someone in the back. You are not a co-star. You are not a featured player. You are the main character of your reality. You must rewrite your script in a way that puts you dead center in that role as the main character of your life. Number two, desire isn't dirty. Desire is the driver of life. The desire to know, to live, to experience, to express, to grow, to expand. That is the whole point of life. You can have the most amazing meal of your life today and you're still going to get hungry again. Desire is not dirty. Desire is the thing that drives the force of life to grow and reproduce and recreate and expand. The key is to not be ruled by your desire. The key is to know that no matter what, everything is always perfect. Everything is always perfect. The energy of not being so attached to an outcome is what you need to carry. That's what allows you to bring things into flow and allow them to manifest into your life. If you have 100% of desire for something, you must also have 100% of being unattached to the outcome and trusting that no matter what, thy will be done, it's always perfect. Another point here, whatever you are creating, it must be benevolent, i.e., it must come from the heart. No more hidden agendas, no more backhanded compliments, no more saying one thing but meaning another. This light, this energy is going to reveal that so quickly. If you're not being honest with yourself, even if you're not aware that you're being dishonest with yourself, even if you're not aware that some subconscious programming is running the show and ruling your actions, it's going to become clear to you. So in that sense, it's a gift. If something falls apart, consider that it's a gift. Consider that there was a reason that it ended or a reason that it never fully completed or came to fruition. And the key is to always come back to your heart and ask yourself, what is the most benevolent choice, thought, belief, or action that I can take right now? Another one, whatever you are doing, whatever you are building and creating, it must be in some way of service. It must serve something that is greater than you. Yes, you can have what you want. Yes, you can fill your glass, fill your bank account, and, fill your plate. But again, it cannot be at the exclusion of the well-being of other people. What serves your greatest well-being serves the collective's greatest well-being. What serves the collective's greatest well-being also serves your greatest well-being. And the two are inextricable. You cannot unwind those two strands. It must be of service. It must in some way take you out of yourself and bring you to that question of what is the most benevolent choice, action, thought, or belief that I can employ right now. The last one is this: whatever it is that you're creating, it must be inclusive of all living things. We can no longer create at the exclusion of the well being of any part of life. Nature shows this all the time. Nature does not create at the exclusion of any part of life. Nature is always inclusive of every living thing, all systems, all energies, all frequencies, all fluctuations, and all waves of energy and frequency are always included in the big picture. Now, the trick is when you understand that you are all of it, that is what gives you the power to decide which part of it you are aligning with and tapping into and creating from. You can move your center into the higher reality, into the higher timelines, and into the higher frequency. And the fastest way to do that is to make it of service, to make it a part of something that is greater than you, and to understand it must be inclusive of the well-being of all living things whenever possible. And honestly, it's always possible. I've been talking about the separation of timelines for many years now, and it's something that is becoming increasingly real in our lives. It is something that is becoming increasingly evident, and all we have to do is take a minute to look out onto the world stage and see that the separation of realities is really coming down to your choice. Are you taking the choice of love and expression and freedom and liberation, or are you going down the path of exclusion, of judgment, of denial, of restriction, of suffering? Are you placing your authority outside of you and saying, save me, help me, define me, validate me? That is the path of suffering. Or are you reclaiming your power and saying, I know who I am, remind me, show me, reactivate me, bring me back to my center so that I can know how to choose that over and over again. I am the creator of my reality. I am the center of my universe, and God wants what I want. My imagination is the creator in action. And that is the path of fulfillment. That is the path of ascension. That is the path of liberation. And these two paths are going to continue to travel parallel for a little bit longer, but increasingly they are beginning to diverge. And it's going to be as if you are looking out of the window of your train, watching the other train that's been running parallel to you for quite some time. You are going to eventually see, oh, look, that train's just pulling over that way. I'm pulling over this way, and I still may be able to see it. I still may be able to track its progress and its movement, but it is getting further and further away from me. It is becoming less and less influential on my reality. And once I decide this is the path that I am on, this is the train that I have bought the ticket for, and this is the choice that I am dedicating and devoting myself to, that's when things get magical. And that's when things really begin to accelerate. And June is the month where I predict we are walking into this month with one version of ourselves intact and exiting the month with an entirely different version of ourselves intact. I think that we are going to be living a lifetime of growth, of evolution, of expansion, of healing and transformation within this one short month. And I think by the end of June, you are going to look back and go, who the WTF was I when this month started? Thank you, as always, for taking the time to hang out with me and watch this video. Please like, share, and subscribe. It really does make a difference, and it does elevate and impact my life in a very positive way to bring more attention and awareness to the work that I share here. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on TikTok. You can find me here on YouTube. You can book a session with me through my website, my booking calendar, and all of those links are in the description box below. Thank you so much. I love you. Have a wonderful June. Take care.